حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. إياك نعبد وإياك الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله الله أكبر. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. A few announcements. First of all, today we have the representatives of Jamia Qasim al-Ulum al-Islamiyya, which is in Muradabad, UP, India. Brothers are kindly requested to generously donate the Zakah, Sadaqah and Lillah. And also, inshallah, after the remaining Salah will be our Zakah presentation. So brothers are kindly requested to stay behind and benefit from the opportunity. And if there's any misconceptions or misunderstandings about the Zakah, they may be able to clarify this, inshallah. Jazakumullah. Brothers who have completed their sunnah are kindly requested to come as close as possible to the minbar. Jazakumullah. Brothers are kindly requested to come as close as possible to the minbar, being mindful of those who are still offering their salah. Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Respected brothers and elders and those listening at home, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah has given us the opportunity to offer our Dhuhr Salah. Along with this, that we are in the month of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to thank Him for this month and make the most of the month of Ramadan. So, in the month of Ramadan, we tend to go through this Zakah presentation. And the purpose is, Zakah is fard, as we all know, just as Salah. Salah is also fard. And when we're reciting the Quran, we come across the verses, Aqimus Salah. And whenever we come across the verse, Aqimus Salah, to establish Salah, it also comes, Wa'atuz Zakah, to give Zakah. Sometimes Zakah is always in our mind, but in terms of discharging of Zakah, there's always certain questions. Maybe we're not sure about how to go about it, and especially not as clear as we may be for our Salah, because Salah we do on a daily basis, Zakah we do it annually. So for this reason we do go through this presentation, and I'm not going to go through everything, because I think there's a lot of people that have kind of become very accustomed to that Zakah is fard on the mature, sane, and it's once a year, and it's on your total what you've got in your bank. So just I'll try and maybe skip in a few things. In terms of the virtues, we know about the virtues of Zakah. Zakah is an act of ibadah. It's not a tax. It's an act of ibadah. So whatever we give into Zakah and whatever is discharged from us that goes to the poor, we are rewarded for it. We are rewarded for it, and that reward is multiplied. One verse of the Quran, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. That whatever you give to purify your wealth in zakah to the poor, and to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is multiplied. Yeah, that wealth is multiplied. So what we'll see is in the hereafter, we may have given £1, but that £1 that we have given in zakah, that was obligatory upon us, has been multiplied by many more folds. Zakah is a pillar of Islam. Zakah actually means to purify one's wealth. So when we discharge of zakah, it's an act of purifying our wealth. So that's the concept that we need to have, and not the concept that it's a tax, so why should I have to give it, or what are the benefits? Zakah is obligatory, as I've just mentioned. It's on sane, adult, Muslim, and someone that has had zakah threshold. So who's got that threshold of zakah. We'll go into the threshold of zakah, how much is the nisab, a little later inshallah. Actually, in the next slide. So there's two thresholds of zakah. One is the gold and one is the silver. So in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, gold and silver value was very kind of equivalent. So it was either 200 dirhams or 20 dinars, and this was a very similar amount of money. What's happened is that gold prices have increased significantly. Like last year, if we were looking at this nisab of gold, it was approximately £6,000. And if we were looking at the nisab of silver, that was approximately £400. And now it's gone up to £1,236. Now this nisab, what is this nisab? This nisab means ultimately is, first of all, we use the nisab of silver. So once a person has a certain amount of wealth, right, then he has to start paying zakah. What is that certain amount of wealth? That wealth is basically either the threshold, the quantum of silver or gold. Now fuqaha and jurists have said we take the lower amount. We take the lower amount, and the lower amount is the silver. So as soon as a person has £1,236 in saving, and he's had that for one full year, then from that time he will pay zakah going forward. And every year that will be his zakah anniversary. So generally people, they choose the month of Ramadan, the first, second, or third, or fourth, whatever month time of the month of Ramadan. Some people might be doing based on their tax year, maybe doing at the beginning of the year, your zakah anniversary, your zakat date can be any date. Yeah, zakat date can be any date. However, once you have the threshold of silver, then you start paying zakah, and you've had that threshold of zakah of silver for 1 year. So for example, let's take it that a young man or young woman become mature, yeah, at the age of 12 or 13, and they had in their savings from the gifts that their parents gave and others gave, they had approximately £1,300. So now they've got that threshold of zakah. As soon as 1 year passes, right? As soon as 1 year passes, then on that date they must give zakah on everything that they have. What do they give zakah on? That we will be discussing further. But that's what establishes a person where he must now give zakah. Why do we not use the nisab of gold? The reason being is because zakah is meant to be anfa' lil fuqara, most beneficial for the fuqara. Right? And the way it will become beneficial for the fuqara is if we use the lower quantum, which is a quantum or the threshold of silver. This is a nisab time frame which I've kind of just discussed. Which types of wealth is zakah obligatory on? So you can see on the slide over here for those of you that are listening at home, and over here as well. But zakah is obligatory on money that is with you in your banks, in your houses, under your pillows, on gold and on silver. If someone is a businessman, any stock in trade, any cash in the bank for the business, zakah will be on all of that. Yeah? Zakah is not on business infrastructure or business machinery. Zakah is not on things that we have for personal use. For example, a person may have a car worth 50,000, 60,000 pounds. There's no zakah on that. Similar, a watch. A person may have a watch worth 15,000 pounds. There's no zakah on that. So zakah is on anything that is a business asset, something that he's intended to sell, gold and silver. It's also on stocks and shares. Zakah is also important to be paid on your pensions, depending on the pension that you have. Cryptocurrency, any cash in hand, any money that you've lent out, zakah will be paid on all of that. And we will go through that in a little bit more detail. Zakah is also obligatory on money that is owed. Now there's different types of debts, or how the Sharia looks at debts. So if you've given money to someone and that person has to return that money, then zakah is obligatory on that. Yeah? So if you've given money to someone, so for example you've lent someone £1,000, so then that £1,000, although you don't have it, someone else has it, you've lent it to someone, you will have to pay zakah on that. Right? So there are other aspects that you may be owed money on, which I will explain in a minute. But just to kind of give an overall understanding, the day you have to pay your zakah, how you would look at it is, for example, on the 5th of Ramadan, you decide, or you've got your zakah anniversary. So you will look at your bank account. How much money do you have in your bank? How much gold and silver do you have? Assuming you do have gold and silver. How much stocks in shares do you have? What does your pension pot look like? Right? How much money have you lent out? You will look at that. And how much money is owed to you? You will look at all of that and you will come up with a figure, bringing all of that together, and then you will pay 2.5% on that. Yeah? You'll pay 2.5% on that. Yeah? So that's how you would kind of calculate your zakah. In terms of money that's owed to you, there's different types of money that's owed to you. One is a very strong loan, right? Strong loan, right? So a strong loan is something where, for example, a zakatable asset has been given on loan, like gold, silver, or cash, right? Generally, for a long time, people were lending out money. Someone wanted £5,000, you would give them money, £5,000. Recently, I've seen people lend out gold, and there's a reason for that. The reason being is because gold is constantly increasing. So some people, what they've did, is that they've converted their savings into gold. So a person had £10,000 in savings. Now that £10,000, rather than keeping it in the bank, what that person has done is converted it into gold. Because gold is a way of safe storing your money or your wealth. Someone asked him for money and he said, well, this person now says that I don't have cash, however, I have maybe 20 grams of gold. So I can give you 20 grams of gold. This person takes that 20 grams of gold. Now, he needs to buy something, so he's not going to buy something with gold. He then goes and sells that gold for the money, he gets money in exchange, and then he uses that, and on the date that it is required, he pays this person back. However, he will pay this person back in gold. Now this person will then go and buy gold again and give the gold back. For example, if he received for 20 grams of gold, I gave someone 20 grams of gold as a loan. Right? This person who I gave the 20 grams of gold to as a loan, he converts that gold into cash, he liquidates that, and he gets, for example, let's say £3,000. He uses £3,000 obviously. Now he's got to return my money back to me. So what he does, I've asked for it back in gold because I gave it in gold. He then has to go and buy the gold 20 grams biscuit or the 20 grams little block. When he goes to buy it, it's actually £3,500. He will have to purchase the gold for £3,500 and return me my gold. Right? This is not interest. Right? This is lending out gold and receiving gold back. So anyway, this is a strong loan. So zakah is payable on this type of loan. Right? Similarly, anything that you've sold, right, and you haven't received money for. So for example, I don't know, nowadays people, they sell on eBay and the other website as well, Vinted or whatever. And people want to sell different types of things, jackets and so forth. So a person has sold some merchandise and he hasn't received money. Zakah is to be paid on that as well, on that transaction, meaning that he's given the jackets or he's given the item and he hasn't received the money. So he would assume that, that money is his and he will pay zakat on that as well. Right? So zakah is obligatory on all of that. The weak loan, we'll just go to the bottom one. I'll explain the medium loan in a minute. The weak loan is any other types of wealth which is owed, there's no zakat on. Right? So for example, outstanding wages, rental income, mahar, right? There's no zakah on. So for example, a person rented out a property or rented out a commercial property or residential property, and this tends to happen is that the tenants, they pay, after some time they stop paying. And this person is thinking that, okay, I'm going to be paid £2,000 this month, but he's not been paid. And he's discussing, arguing with that person, whatever. Month 2 comes, no payment. Now he's thinking that in his head, he's going to be receiving £4,000, but he hasn't received it. 3rd month comes, another £2,000 is expected, but he doesn't receive it. £6,000. In his mind, he assumes that he will receive that money. He doesn't receive it. His zakah anniversary comes. There's no zakah to be paid on this £6,000 that he is owed. Neither now and neither later on. Right? So there's no zakah on this rental income. There's no zakah on wages as well that is due. Right? So this is how we will treat the weak loan. Medium loan, most fuqaha tend to go towards medium loan is to be treated as the strong loan as well. Right? So any money that is owed for non-zakatable assets that you have sold. So it's, for example, like a laptop that you had, a personal laptop. Someone had let's say, a very high-tech laptop worth £2,000. It was his personal. So you don't pay zakah on your £2,000 worth laptop, yes? Because it's for your personal use. You've sold that, and you're waiting for the money for that. Now, it's a large amount, £2,000. So some scholars are of the opinion that medium loan, you do not pay zakat on. Other scholars say, no, that is also zakatable. You could treat it either way, whichever way you treat it, we must be consistent that every year going forward, we will treat it in that way. Sometimes this could be a bit different in terms of larger sums. For example, a person has a house. It was his personal house, and he decided to move to another country. He decided to move abroad, so he sold the house. He sold it to someone in the family. So it's not a bank, it's someone in the family, and it's worth, let's say, £100,000. He's not been paid for that house yet. Now, bearing in mind, if this property was stock in trade, meaning this person was actually buying and selling properties, then there will be zakat on it. But because this is his personal asset, right, and he's selling, right, there shouldn't be any zakat on it. However, especially there'll be zakat on it once he receives the money. But as I've said, that weak loan, fuqaha have gone on both sides. Some say that you do pay zakat on it, although you've not been paid for it, and others say you do not pay zakat on it up until you receive it, then moving forward you'll pay. But that's how to treat loans in that respect. Zakah on merchandise. So for example, a person is buying and selling things, or he has a shop, he has a business. So everything that will end up in the customer's hand, zakat is to be paid on that. Now, any stock that is complete, and is ready to sell, will be zakatable at the selling price of that stock. So for example, if a person is selling garments, so garments in the sense of, let's say, jackets. A person manufactures jackets and sells jackets. This person has 100 jackets that he's got ready to sell. Those jackets will be zakatable according to the selling price. Now, the selling price can be a wholesale price, or it could be a retail price. A person generally has an understanding that 30% of my stock goes towards retail and 70% goes towards wholesale. So with that calculation, this is how he will accumulate, or this will how he will calculate, he or she will calculate and pay zakat on that. Any merchandise that's not been made as yet, and it's not created, it's in raw material. So zakah will be paid on the raw material. Zakah will be paid on the raw material. Like for example, a person's making jackets, it'll be on the thread, it'll be on the haberdasheries, it'll be on the zipped chains, the cloth, and anything, the packaging. Yeah, a person may have a food business, so raw material, zakah will be on all the raw material. Sometimes a person has a business where they get another manufacturer to manufacture, and they've paid for that merchandise. So they've paid, say, £5,000, right? They've paid £5,000. It's in making process. So it's not made as yet. So in that case, the person will pay zakah based on the money that they have paid for these merchandise as of yet, because it's not been made. Once it's made, then a person will pay based on the selling price. Jazakallah. Where were we? Okay, zakah on merchandise, yes. Zakah is due on the value of the stock using the selling price, so we've just kind of been through this. Deducting money you owe, right? So sometimes a person, once he's looked at his whole financial position, then he also understands that he's got to pay some money. So for example, he's got to pay bills, he's got to pay utility bills for business or for personal, that this can be deducted. Right? He's got any expenses that go out in that month, food bills, anything, so these can be deducted. So deductables, any short-term debt already owed will be deducted from the zakah. So for example, I borrowed £2,000, so I can pay that, I can deduct that from my total amount, because I've got to pay someone back. Now, there's a difference between a long-term and a short-term debt. Especially in this country, many of us have long-term debts in terms of our houses or maybe cars, and I'm talking about halal finances, because haram finances we will look at separately, but halal finances, like for example, I bought a house, the equity in my house is £200,000, and I owe £200,000. This £200,000 that I owe, technically speaking, if I was to deduct that from my total amount, I wouldn't be paying zakah. And that would ultimately mean that no one will pay zakah. So how you treat these long-term debts is by deducting whatever is due for that particular month, the installment that is due for that particular month. Yeah? So we could deduct that. For example, my monthly installment is £1,000, so we could deduct £1,000 from my total amount. You can't deduct the full £200,000. If it's an interest-based, you could only deduct not the interest amount. You could only deduct the actual amount that is going towards the capital. And if it's an interest-only loan, then you can't deduct anything. There are some endowment policy loans or endowment policy home purchase plans that you borrow money, you pay interest for 25 years, and you just continue paying interest, and you're not paying anything towards the capital repayment. In that case, you would not be able to deduct anything. So any bills that are due immediately in that month, yes, you can deduct. A question that generally arises is, for example, about Hajj nowadays. So for example, a person wants to go for Hajj, and it's based on the Nusuk, and it's based on phases, phase 1, phase 2. So the phase 1 this year has already happened, and people are trying to book Hajj. So when you're booking Hajj, you have to then transfer money into the Nusuk app, right? Or the Nusuk wallet. So that's money going from your current account and going into the digital wallet. Then only can you actually purchase. You could only purchase once it goes from your digital wallet to the the Nusuk payment processing platform. So you've transferred money, and it costs you to transfer money, maybe £300, £400. However, phase 1, you tried to book Hajj and it didn't work. Phase 2 come, you tried to book Hajj and it didn't happen for you. You couldn't get the booking. Now that means that ultimately you won't be able to go Hajj this year. You will go Hajj next year, inshallah. The thing that happens here now is that the person is contemplating that, shall I withdraw my money from this this digital wallet? If the person withdraws it, there's a transaction fee again of £300 or so, whatever it might be. And then next year, when he's going to go for Hajj, he's going to re-put that money back in, so he's going to pay another transaction fee. So the person thinks to himself, I'd rather just keep my money in that digital wallet. Is there zakah on that? Yes, there is zakah on that amount that is there. Although you're not spending it, you don't have kind of direct access to it, but you do have access. So it is zakatable. You have to pay zakat on that. A person may have saved up for a wedding, right, and is just kept it in one account, not using it. Zakat is on that as well. A person has kept money for, a father has kept money for teenage son, daughter's wedding. Yes, zakat is obligatory on that as well. So any forms of savings, whether it's already earmarked for a particular cause and is definitely going to be paid, so long as the transaction has not taken place, zakat is obligatory on that. So non-deductible, future expenses and bills, right, as I mentioned, so that month is fine, nothing beyond that. Interest, you can't deduct interest. Income gained from unlawful means, sales of alcohol, lottery tickets, and etc. So these are things which are not deductible from our zakat, from our total wealth. Zakah on shares and investments. This is quite common, where people invest into shares, like an ISA or non-ISA, whatever it might be. So there's two ways people generally invest. One is where people are investing just for the sake of investing, and investing for the the hype of that particular share. Like for example, there's a tech company that's just come up, and everyone's going to be going for it because there's a lot of publicity. So the share is at the moment £1, and it's going to sell for £2 or £3. So when a person invests in this way, the person is just there for the hype and for the ride of getting the extra. So that whole portfolio of investment, share investment, is zakatable, yeah, the whole amount, because his way of trading is buying and selling shares. He simply is there to buy and sell shares. So his shares are classified as stock in trade. It could be multiple companies, but he doesn't look too much into the companies. What his strategy of business is that he buys shares that are potentially going to go up and he just sells them. Looks at another few shares, potentially buys, sells, and then just sells them. He's not necessarily looking into the ethics of the business. He's not looking into what the business is about, and etc. Yeah? You have another type of person. In that case, the whole amount of shares is zakatable. Yeah, the whole amount. So if it's £10,000, £10,000 is zakatable at 2.5%. On the other hand, you have someone that invests £10,000, but his method of investment is based on, I want to benefit from the dividends, number one, and I actually believe in this company. This company is doing good, and so he's more, kind of connecting himself to that company. So he's like an actual shareholder in that company. So he looks at what they're doing. He looks at what type of business they're doing, transactions they're doing. He looks at what's their business model and all this kind of stuff. So now he's actually a shareholder in the business. Yeah, because investing in shares is like a shareholder in a business. In this way, if a person is investing, you do not pay zakah on the full amount. So for example, a person has invested £10,000 into shares, and he's expecting dividends or not getting dividend, doesn't matter, but he's more to do with long-term investment. He likes the business, he likes the company, and he feels that what they're doing is good. I'd like to be a part of this. So he doesn't pay zakah on the full £10,000. He will only pay zakah on the zakatable asset of that company. Right? Zakatable asset of that company. Now, any company has zakatable assets and non-zakatable assets. Zakatable assets are, for example, cash in hand, stock in trade. This is zakatable assets. Money owed for merchandise sold. This is zakatable asset. Non-zakatable asset is, for example, the business's buildings, the business's machinery. This is non-zakatable. So there's no zakat to be paid on that. So generally speaking, that's a little bit of homework that a person would need to do based on looking at their annual report and etc. So a person would go start reading the annual report and try and understand what is their zakatable asset, what is a non-zakatable asset, and based on that, then pay. So it may be that on £10,000, they're actually only having to pay zakat on £4,000, because £6,000 is non-zakatable asset. Now, to make this, for example, this is just a kind of a way of looking at it, working it out, but recently, or some time ago now, there are certain muftis and scholars that have come up with a proxy amount, right? Now, it'd be difficult for the layman to actually try and look into what zakatable and non-zakatable assets for each company. So in terms of shares, what they've said is that look at the 40% proxy amount. So if you're investing into shares and you're investing to become a shareholder in that company, and you're actually looking at the dividend amounts and etc., then assume that 40% of your companies is zakatable. 40% of your amount that you've invested is zakatable. This will save a person from going to do all that kind of research in each and every different company. So suppose a person's got an ISA account, and generally in ISA, what happens is that a person has multiple companies that this person has invested into. So just look at the whole amount and have a ballpoint figure of 40%. That 40% is zakatable. So this makes it slightly easier in terms of how to calculate zakat on shares and investments. Pensions. So this is something which is very common. I think all of us have pensions, or most of us will have pensions. And there's two types of pensions. One is your company pension, one is your private pension, and then you have your state pension. So state pensions are not zakatable. I'm going to explain the two types of, broadly speaking, two types of pensions. Right? And I'm not going to actually say the name, because that kind of confuses people trying to remember the name of the type of pension pot. So one pension works in this way, where you work for a company and you contribute from your salary into a pension pot, right? The company also puts a amount in on behalf of you into a pension pot, and then that accumulates, and you do this every month. You do this every month. So maybe 3% goes from your salary and 2% goes from the company's salary, from the company. And then on your retirement, they give you a certain amount every month, right? They give you a certain amount every month. Your zakah pot, or your zakah is your pension is zakatable based on the understanding how much you will get back. So if your company is saying to you, we will give you an average amount of your salary after you retire, we will give you an average amount, regardless of how much you have contributed. If you've worked for 5 years, we will give you an average amount according to that 5 years. If you worked for 10 years, we will give you an average amount of 10 years. If that is your pension pot, and if that is the the detail of your pension pot, then your pension pot is not zakatable. Your pension pot is not zakatable. There's no zakat to be paid on your pension. Why? Because your pension pot is not working for you. It's actually working for the company that you're working for, because they're guaranteeing you, or they're saying to you, we will give you an average amount after you retire. Another pension pot is where you invest, your company invests for you as well, right? And as you invest, and however much you invest, and how your pension pot does good or bad, on your retirement, that will be how much money you will get for the remainder of your lifetime, right? So in this aspect, what's happening is that your pension pot is working for you. Yeah, your pension pot is working for you. If your pension pot is working for you, then that is zakatable, right? So every year you look at your final pension statement, right? And you understand that, okay, my zakah pot is worth £50,000. So you'll pay 2.5% on £50,000. Actually, no, you won't pay 50%, because even in those companies, there will be zakatable assets and non-zakatable assets, which in the next slide will give you a proxy amount, right? So for example, if you've worked for 10 years, you may have only contributed £4,000. Your company has also contributed £4,000. So that's an accumulation of £8,000. But after 10 years, your pension pot is worth £12,000. So that £4,000 has actually accumulated over the business, or the investment that pension pot has done. So it's important to note that where your money is being invested has to be halal. So you must look at your pension pot and understand that, is it a Sharia compliance pension pot? Yeah. So if your pension pot is working for you, then it's zakatable. How much zakat do you pay? You pay based on this next slide here. So for example, if your pension pot statement states that it is a Sharia fund, then 25% of it is zakatable. If it's a direct property fund, then only 15% is zakatable. The rest, 85%, is non-zakatable. So we're looking at over here, the type of fund, right? So your pension pot generally, you get an annual statement, and on that annual statement, it will state what type of, investment is it, or what type of pension fund is it. So if it's a Sharia fund, 25% of that pot will be zakatable. If it's a direct property fund, it's going to be 15%. If it's an equity fund, then it's 27%. Mixed asset funds are at 50%. So this will also give you an easy proxy to understand and to make sure that you're paying the right amount, rather than just looking at the whole pension pot and paying 2.5% on the whole amount. You don't need to pay on the whole amount, because That money has been invested into companies, and those companies, their assets are not fully zakatable. Part of it is zakatable, part of it is non-zakatable. So again, financialists and ulama and scholars and muftis have sat down together and understood that overall, generally speaking, what are we looking at? How much of a company is, does it have zakatable assets? So this is what the practice that we've come up with. Okay, so as a conclusion, at gold, silver, cash, merchandise and shares and pensions, loans are owed to you by others minus the debts, and then ultimately apply the 2.5%, and that is how much zakah you have to pay on your wealth. Now, do you have to pay it on the same day? No, you don't have to pay it on the same day. You could pay it over the next few months. I would say that the best practice would be to pay it before your next zakah anniversary arrives. So these are zakatable assets and non-zakatable assets. In terms of crypto, many people have invested into cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency is more, very similar to, on one side is similar to shares, and on the other side is similar to, kind of normal money. So you have certain coins like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is actually there to be able to do transactions, to buy and sell. Bitcoin is used to buy and sell. There are some coins which are utility based. So for example, you have that coin to be able to do something, right? To be able to maybe vote, or to be able to actually use another facility. So that's known as a utility coin. You have one coin like the Bitcoin, which is a transaction coin. Yeah? Then you have some other coins which are governance coins. So these are the different types of coins. If you have Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, if you have cryptocurrency, and it's just there that you've bought it like to buy and sell. So when Bitcoin goes up, when Ethereum goes up, when the Litecoin goes up, or one of these coins go up, then I will sell. And then that whole portfolio of your cryptocurrency will be zakatable. If you're there for a more meaningful understanding of cryptocurrency, so you've got Bitcoin to actually be able to buy and sell, and you've got a governance coin to be able to use in forms of voting or making some decisions about a particular company. And if you've got utility coins to be able to use the facility of that utility, then it's a different thing. Utility coins will not be zakatable if they're there to actually benefit from the aspect of it being a utility coin. Similar governance coins. You bought the governance coin to be able to have a say in the company, in the governance, or in another company. So this is non-zakatable. Then Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be zakatable because that is a coin which is used to actually, buy and sell. So you could buy and sell on the, on the market with Bitcoin. So that's how you would consider paying zakat on Bitcoin. Necessary assets, so things which are where zakat is not paid on, is clothes which a person is using regardless of the value of the clothing. Sometimes some people nowadays have very expensive jackets worth £1,000. There's no zakat on that. Shoes, footwear could be very expensive as well, no zakat on that. Household goods, again, no zakat on that. Anything for personal use, no zakat on that. Assets used for work, like a builder, he has his van and he has tools in it. The tools could be worth 50, 60, 70,000 pounds. There is no zakat on that. The place of residence, regardless of how expensive it is. And any other essentials, like for example, a mobile phone, a watch, whatever it might be. There's no zakat on that. Zakat is only on those things which are beyond your basic necessities. For zakat to be valid, it's important that it goes into the ownership of a poor person, a recipient of zakah. So the recipient of zakah is that person who does not have the threshold of nisab. So as we learned in the earlier slide, the nisab right now is approximately £1,240. So you could give zakah to someone who has less than £1,240. Someone for example, simply speaking, you might find families here that don't have £1,240 in savings. You can give zakah to them, and especially more so if they need, meaning that they're earning, but the earning is not enough for them. They're having to go to food banks, or they might not be having to go to food banks, but they don't have savings of more than £1,240, or they do have savings of more than, let's say, £1,240. They have savings of £2,000, but they have debt, personal loans that they've borrowed money from one another, people, right? And that loan and debt is of £5,000, and that takes over their money that they've saved up, £2,000. So they are still eligible and entitled to zakah. The key point is, our zakah has to go to the ownership of someone that is a recipient of zakah, right? So we can't give it to, as it says over here, we can't give it to a masjid. We can't give zakah to a masjid. We can't give zakah to an orphanage. We can't give zakah for the digging of a well or for a hospital. No, zakah cannot be used. However, like we have representatives coming from different organizations to help us distribute our zakah. So they take our zakah and they distribute it. So the representatives that come over here, we're not actually giving it to the madrasa. We're giving it to the madrasa so that they then go and distribute it to the poor. Or they give it to the poor people that are within their custody, like a madrasa, an orphanage and something. So zakah money cannot be used for the charity itself, for the orphanage, or for the digging of a well, or for the masjid. Zakah has to be going from my ownership. My £10 or my £100 goes from me, and it's given to someone, and that someone is entitled, eligible for zakah, and that person can do whatever they want with that money. That's total transfer of ownership. Okay, zakah cannot be given to, so think of it in this way. You can't give zakah to people above you or below you. Above you meaning your parents and grandparents, right? You can't give zakah to below you, meaning your direct children. However, you could give zakah to anyone in your relationship that would come on the side. Like, for example, uncles and aunts, brothers and sisters, nephews and nieces, you could give zakah to them. You can't give zakah to your spouses. So husband giving it to wife, or wife giving it to husband. So this is in terms of family. Bearing in mind, giving zakah to family members that are eligible and entitled is more rewarding. The reward is of twofold. One is of discharging your zakah, and the second reward is of actually having good ties and relationship with your relatives. Okay, a few questions. So for example, the first one is about gold. Gold in its entirety is zakatable, but you've got to work out, is it pure gold or non-pure gold? If it's not pure gold, then the whole amount of it will not be zakatable, or it will be zakatable based on the value of the gold in it, like 12 karat, 18 karat, or whatever. White gold is also zakatable. Yeah. Other precious metals, like for example, platinum, that's not zakatable, that's not gold. Silver is also zakatable. Yeah. Okay. If a person has a few houses and they're on rent, the houses themselves are not zakatable. The rent money that you receive is zakatable, but that would also be only on the time when your zakat anniversary arrives. Whatever money you have will be zakatable according to them. Child trust funds. This is a question that is generally asked. So child trust funds. At one time the government gave £250 or £300 for two families who had children to invest into a child trust fund. That money was invested, and it was invested into a Sharia compliant fund, and it's accumulated. So maybe after 10 years, this fund may be, or this pot may be worth £5,000, let's say. So is it zakatable? It's zakatable by that child who becomes mature. So as soon as that individual becomes mature. So if the child is 9 years old, it's not zakatable. As soon as the child becomes mature, maybe 12, 13 years old, then it is zakatable. And that, that child needs to be explained that you've got this fund available for you. You're going to get it at the age of 18, but it's your money, so zakah has to be paid on that. Money that is kept for children. For example, in this country, families get something called child benefit. Now, child benefit is not automatically the child's money. It's a tax rebate that the government gives to families who have children. So it's a tax rebate. Or you may not want to look at it as a tax rebate because every child is entitled to child benefit, whether their parents are paying tax or not paying tax. But child benefit is a stipulated amount that the government gives to each and every child. That money does not necessarily become the money of the child. That money is for the parents to help them bring up their children. However, some families, they decide that, okay, that child benefit money, I want to keep it to a side and use it for my children or my child. Is that zakatable? It's not zakatable if the adult, the father or mother, is not using it, or if they use it, then they return it back and they totally have ring-fenced it for a child, then it's not zakatable. It will only be zakatable once that child, for who it is for, becomes mature. Then zakah will have to be paid on that. The first question there, I've kept some money aside to fulfill my duties of Hajj, which I've explained, which is zakatable. Second question, can zakah be paid in advance? Yes, zakah can be paid in advance. For example, a person knows every year he pays around £3,000, £4,000 in zakah, and a cause has come up, so he can pay zakah in advance. Is there zakah on diamonds? No, there's no zakah on diamonds if it's for personal use. So a person bought a diamond, so there is no zakah on that, so long as it's not stock in trade. If a person is actually buying and selling diamonds, then yes, there will be zakat on that. Otherwise, there will not be zakah. I've kept some money aside for my children's weddings. Yes, that's zakatable. I have some interest money in my account. Do I need to pay zakat on that interest? No, zakah is not to be paid on interest money that you have accumulated in your account. However, because that's not yours, and that has to be discharged and given into charity as immediately. Is intention necessary for the fulfillment of zakah? Yes, intention is necessary. So you must intend that you are discharging of your zakah. Do you have to tell the recipient? No, you do not have to tell the recipient that it is zakah, but it's important that you do know who you're giving it to is entitled to zakah. It's, when we're traveling sometimes to countries which have been struck with a conflict and that, it can be difficult to actually ascertain and understand who is entitled to zakah. Regardless of the severity of the issue, for zakah to be established and for zakah to be discharged from us, it's important that it goes from our ownership into the poor person's ownership. That's why there is a question mark about, and charities, organizations do also understand this as well. That, for example, zakah money is given to a particular organization and they buy food, rations, and they're transporting it from one place to another. And whatever happens, it gets stolen, it gets destroyed. That is ultimately a question mark whether zakah has been established and zakah has been paid. Clearly, zakah has not been paid. So, there has to be a clear, kind of understanding in that regards that, when will my zakah be paid? So organizations understand this as well, and as individuals should also understand this to make sure. Sometimes you might want to be just careful and give sadaqah. Yeah, give sadaqah, and that way you're for sure that your money is being discharged correctly. If you haven't given zakah for multiple years, then you must backdate zakah as well. Any other questions?
So the last part that you said, for example, if you didn't know about something and you've just learned that you have to backdate on the amount that you haven't paid.
Yeah.
And in terms of the business zakat, so if you buy stock weekly and you sell stock weekly, so there's nothing that's been sitting for a year basically.
Yeah. That's right.
You don't pay zakat on that.
No. So your business zakah anniversary date, let's assume it's on the 1st of Ramadan. On that 1st of Ramadan, you will look into your business. What do you have? I have nothing. There's no zakah. What do I have in my account? Oh, I have maybe £200, because the rest is I've taken and I spent. So you'll only pay zakah on £200.
But let's say, for example, the stock that you buy, let's say the anniversary date, you do have stock, but it's only been there for a week.
No. Even if it's been there. So in terms of zakah, for example, it could be there for a week, it could be there for a day before.
Yeah.
On that zakah anniversary day, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, so same as personal as well. So for example, in the year I had nothing, and one day before Ramadan, some great friend, he come and gave me £10,000. On the 1st of Ramadan, I will have to pay zakah on £10,000. Also, something very important, some people have a particular pot which they keep as their kind of reserve, £20,000, let's say, for someone that's very lucky, that's got £20,000. They paid zakat on £20,000 last year, and this year they're thinking, do I have to pay it again? Well, you have to pay it again, because you've got that money. But some people think, well, I paid zakat on that money, and it's the same money, it's just sitting there. I didn't do nothing to it, I didn't withdraw it, put it back. No, I didn't benefit. No, you have to pay zakat on it again. But it shouldn't be seen as a burden, because zakat actually multiplies and increases your wealth, gives you that barakah.
Just a quick question. Pensions.
Ah,
You know, raw milk pension basically. You have to pay it when you actually receive it, or when the pot is building up as it's going along?
when you, okay, so depending on what the pension fund is like, so again, if you're going to get a average amount after you retire, then your pension pot, right, is non-zakatable. Yeah. However, if you're going to get an amount based on how well your pension pot has done, right, then that is zakatable. Another way of understanding that is that if you get a pension statement every year, that is your pension statement. So that's your pension pot. So that is zakatable. Like for example, state pension, we don't get a pension statement. Yeah. So pension pots where you don't get a statement are generally that, okay, you're just going to get a certain amount of money after you retire. Right? That's known as a defined benefit scheme. The other one is a defined contribution, that you contribute, and as you contribute, your company contributes as well. That portfolio grows. Every year you have to look at it. How much has it grown? Right? So if it does really well, then you will get that money back after you retire. If it doesn't do too well, that's the only money you get. And if it goes totally bankrupt, you probably get nothing. Yeah. So yes, you have to pay every year. If you don't pay every year in this situation, then when you do get your money, then you have to backdate it. Because that pension pot is working for you. It's your money. Yeah. It's like you investing into something, right? In fact, in such a way that you could actually withdraw. The only reason people don't withdraw is because they put a heavy penalty on it of around 40% or something, that if you try and withdraw.
That's what I was asking. I'm retired, but my pot is still there. So I have to pay. And how much do I have to pay?
Okay, so and are you receiving monthly at the moment?
No, not from that pot, no.
Okay, and when will you receive from that pot?
Probably next year.
Oh, once you're...
I'll take it next year, probably.
Okay, and that pot is yours, and you get an annual statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it says the amount that it's this much, £50,000. Yeah, so you have to pay zakat on that. Depending on what it says, is it a Sharia fund, mixed asset fund? So if you look on your pension,
It won't be Sharia, will it?
it can. So you see, when you're working for a company, the pension fund is not a Royal Mail fund necessarily. Even if it is, it's always a third-party company that's doing the investments and that. And you could dictate to them saying that, okay, I want my money to be invested into a Sharia compliant. So they call it the Sharia fund. So on that statement, it will say your pension pot is a Sharia fund one, or direct property fund, or equity fund, or mixed asset fund. Whichever one it says mixed asset, so then that is 50% zakatable. So you look at the total amount.
And then from that 50%.
50%, 2.5%.
2.5 on 50%.
On 50%.
And the interest, when you say charity, which charity should the interest go to?
So interest money can go to any poor person. Any poor person. Yeah. So you could give it to Muslim as well and non-Muslim as well. Zakah has to go to Muslim. Zakah has to go to Muslim. Interest, anyone, any recipient, any poor person, Muslim and non-Muslim. Also, there's another question that, for example, a family has a property, right, and it's on rent. So the rent is accumulating, and people tend to do this. The rent is accumulating, and they don't touch that money. So how should the zakah be paid on that? So, for example, 5 years they've got this property and it's on rent, and it's on both husband and wife's name, for example, and the money has been accumulated in a particular account. So who pays the zakah on that? Zakah is paid by the owner of that wealth. Now, if they made it that, no, we're not going to access that money, right? We'll keep it for another day. Best way to treat it is that just pay it from that particular bank account. The rent is coming, right? Any expenses that need to be done on that property, maintenance and that, should also be paid from there, right? It is husband and wives, but rather than them, paying from their own accounts, they could pay from there, and it's right to be paid from there. In fact, them being, the husband or the wife saying that I want to pay from that particular account establishes the fact that each person has a right over it and a say over it. If a person doesn't have right over it and a say over it, that means that that's not his money. And if it's not his money, there's no zakat on that. So you pay zakat on your own money. If there's a pot of money that's there available, but you can't access it, you can't spend it, that's not yours. So there's no zakat on it. Someone else to pay zakat on it, or it's a business asset, so the business will pay zakat on it.
Let's say I've borrowed money from my dad. The understanding is if I pay it back, I pay it back. If I don't, then I don't. Does he still have to pay zakat on that?
So you've borrowed money from your father. Yeah, and
the understanding that if I pay it back, I pay it back. If I don't, then I don't.
Okay, so first of all,
there's no agreement that you have to pay it back.
Okay, so that way, what can happen is that your father, who you borrowed money from, he can pay zakat on that when he receives it and backdate it. Yeah.
Can you give more than the zakat percentage when he does mention for the rest to be
Yes, certainly. There's no necessity. 2.5% is the bare minimum. Yeah. Any other questions? Inshallah. Okay. Jazakallah, inshallah. Hope that's helped everyone. Okay, pension needs to be Sharia compliant.
You can ask your pension fund to change it to HSBC.
A few more questions. Can zakah be put aside each year and then build a home for homeless? Ideally, it should be paid, zakah should be paid within the 1 lunar year. Yeah? Within the 1 lunar year, zakah should be discharged of. Yeah? Is zakah paid on personal jewelry being sold? Okay, so someone's got jewelry and they're selling it. Do they pay zakat on it? They only pay zakat on it once it's sold, and once it's sold. Whether they've received the money or not, it doesn't matter. But if it's sold and they are to receive the money, then yes, they will pay zakat on it. Someone doesn't have a job nor money to support his family and expenditure. His father is financially supporting him and his family. Is he eligible to receive zakah? So anyone, regardless of how they've been supported, you might have someone, for example, in some countries this happens, especially in our native countries, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or where we generally come from, that a person is not able to work for whatever reason, disabled or social anxieties or whatever it might be. A person is not able to work. And throughout the year, he's been supported by other family members who are well off. Right? We then go to our native country and we come across this person. And we find out that they've been supported by other family members, and everything has been taken care of. The fact that they do not have the quantum of nisab in their savings, still they are entitled and eligible for zakah. So we can give them zakah. Does zakah need to be paid on branded shoes, trainers, more than one pair, which is worn maybe a few times a year? Same with the branded watches. As long as it's been worn a few times, right, then it's fine. If it is deemed as it is beyond a person's necessities, not basic, if it's deemed as beyond a person's necessity, then zakah has to be paid. A person may have a watch for different occasions. When I go to weddings, I wear this watch. When I go to a job interview, I'll wear this jacket and this clothing. So there's no zakah. But if it's beyond the person's necessity and it's just there and it's not needed for any occasion or any time, then it can be zakatable. Okay, and that's the end of the questions online as well, inshallah. Jazakallah. Hope this has helped everyone. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to discharge our zakah accordingly. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi.